Thank you.
Everyone, we're gonna test the audio, so we'll go live for a moment. If you want to be aware that it is going to go live for a moment.
Okay. I am.
So,
Yeah, my microphone is on.
Will, you are,
It's not.
Wait back to
It's the Zoom.
go into Zoom and mute yourself in Zoom. It's on the right.
Thank you.
Okay, well, that's
Okay,
it.
testing, it's not doing anything.
Setting up Zoom.
good, just barely made it back.
Why did you hurry back? What are you thinking?
I don't know, but.
Go back to Zoom real quick.
Okay,
And
okay.
it's not the microphone, it's the speaker.
So we're.
And that's correct. Oh, you're on stop. You have to
I
hit
could have
record.
about 20 reasons to stay in Vegas.
Won't pick it up, just pick it up.
No, has to. It's picking it all of it up. That's why it's,
TV and everything.
So it's good.
yeah.
Okay, it's good.
Then you can hit stop to
Okay.
kill that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Welcome, everybody, to the Cottonwood Heights City Council work session for Tuesday, May 21st, 2024. I'm going to call this meeting to order. The first item on our agenda today is a review quickly of our business meeting this evening. So Councilmember Holton isn't here, so I'll let you guys help me to remind him that we're going to ask him to do the pledge.
Okay.
Okay. We will also have our city council reports that we do once a month tonight, and we'll have a citizen comment period. We only have 3 legislative items for the council to consider this evening, and we'll start tonight with item 5.1, consideration of ordinance 416, amending code chapter 15, buildings and construction concerning demolition. So this is an item that we've been discussing for a few weeks, and I know Tim and Shane have. Actually, I'll turn some time over to Tim to give you some background about why we're going to talk about this, and then that's anyway, and then we will plan on voting on it later. So Tim, I'll turn the time to you.
Yeah, and I can let Mike and Shane talk a little bit about it, but we wanted to be able to enhance our codes related to demolition. There's a minor element for those that are non-historic structures, making sure that it's defined in the code what we want, or the process that has to be gone through to have that occur. And then also for historic buildings and anyway, and the protections of demolition, so they cannot go and demolish a historic building without a very in-depth process. If things occur, there are fines that are associated with that we've defined in this. And then if the building comes down, the process of redevelopment. So those are some of the elements of that. Mike and Shane, if you want to add specifics to that, you can.
I would just add that before this proposed amendment, demolitions are kind of just covered by reference in the building code. So it's good to have some direct code language associated with this.
Yeah, I agree. Shane, anything you'd like to?
Yeah, this includes both non-historic structures and historic structures. We had some verbiage in chapter 19.86 of the code about protections of historic structures. This expands on that somewhat, and I think that it's we've got the possibility of criminal penalties for demolition of either type of structure, historic or non-historic, without the proper approvals. And then on the historic, why we also have the ability to impose civil penalties of $500 a day. That can be stopped if whoever tore it down gets an application approved to rebuild the structure. And then there's also that civil penalty stops accruing after currently a year. Couldn't let that go on forever, but after a year, if there hasn't been an application to rebuild, why then that civil penalty of $500 a day stops, and a restriction is placed on the property that can't be redeveloped for a significant period of time. So this follows to some extent the pathway that Salt Lake City has adopted since they had a situation a few months ago with someone tearing down a historic structure that was under protection by the city. So we're kind of piggybacking on what they have done.
Yeah. Yeah, like Shane mentioned, that's what kind of put that on our radar. It's the Salt Lake City issue. So I failed to mention Councilmember Ellen Burrell from District 4 is online. She's here. Ellen, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Great. Any questions or comments from the council on this item? Pretty straightforward. Okay, great. The next item that we'll consider tonight is item 5.2, consideration of resolution 2024-37, approving performance contracts for the 2024 Butlerville Day. So Chief, that's for Post Malone, right?
He wanted to be.
No, I'm just teasing.
I hope he's gone country, so that's gonna be.
That's a teasing. Anyway, I'm sure there are gonna be some great performers, but Tim, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, the two groups are Vocalocity and Charlie Jenkins. The total amount or the cost for both contracts is $6,500 combined. Part of the budget that's been approved or allocated for this, and we're recommending approval of these contracts, similar to what we've done in other past years.
Questions or comments from the council?
No, done.
Great. So the next item for tonight, the last action item rather, will be a 5.3, consideration of resolution 2024-38. Authorizing certain retirement contributions and benefits. So Tim, let me have you give some background.
Yeah, and Paula put together the information on this, but back in 2020, the city council adopted a resolution that said that we would pick up the additional costs that Utah retirement systems put in place for, well, particularly public safety officials. This year, the URS is requiring, Utah Retirement Systems is requiring an updated resolution. So we've approved that resolution in 2020. This is updating that and basically stating that we would cover the tier 2 hybrid option. We're recommending approval of it. So it's just kind of an update for that. Anything to add, Paula?
Questions or comments?
Not a budget item, it's just coming into compliance. I understand it.
There will be a budget impact.
Yeah, but we've covered that
Yeah.
for years, and we'll continue to cover that as well. And it's built into the tentative budget and is every year.
Okay, and then the last item will be approval of our consent calendar, which are our May 7th meeting minutes. So the item number 3 on our agenda, we are excited to have here with us today. The Salt Lake County Community Services Associate Director Joey is here with us, and Maggie Bills, great to have you. And Mika, sorry, and Mika, yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to disclose anybody. So we want to invite you up. So Tim and I a couple weeks ago had the opportunity to meet with Robin and Joey, and to discuss some of the changes that will be coming to Whitmore Library. And so we wanted them to come and present to the council. Would you all mind maybe coming up to these 3 open seats, and we'll let you do your presentation, and we'd love to hear everything that you're going to tell us about Whitmore Library.
Who wants to drive?
All right. Oh, the weighty responsibility.
So just.
Right, okay, this is exciting. We also can't, I guess we can look up here. He's flying blind. Good afternoon. My name is Joey McNamee. I am the Associate Director of the Department of Community Services, which is the administrative agency in Mayor Wilson's portfolio that oversees libraries, parks and rec, arts and culture, and the planetarium. In that role, I have also had the wonderful opportunity to serve as the library's interim director, which I am doing now, and I'm sort of here in, I guess, both capacities. Robin Chalhoub, my boss, the Director of Community Services, was hoping to join us here in this meeting today, but she is at our county council meeting, talking about a Bravenel Hall. So.
Maria's and I didn't say her last name. Now, how do you pronounce it?
Chalhoub.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
So thank you so much for having us here today. We also have a couple of other reinforcements from the library with our associate directors, Matt McLean and Jennifer Fay. And without further ado, if you guys want to introduce yourselves quickly, we can roll into our slides.
Sure. I'm Maggie Mills. I'm the manager at Whitmore Library.
And I'm Mika Nielsen. I am the acting in assistant manager at the Whitmore Library right now.
Great.
A lot of moving and shaking at the library. So by way of a little bit of overview of the library, wait, I'm the clicker. I shall click. Okay. Our mission is to make a positive difference in the lives of our community by inspiring imagination, satisfying curiosity, and providing a great place for everyone to visit. And we take that very seriously. So we love being a welcoming place where you can find what you're looking for. As you can see, in a year, we have 2.6 million visitors coming through our doors. And we'll have 500,000 folks attending different programs at the library. Not going to read you all these stats because you can read them, but a couple I want to highlight is almost 12.5 million items checked out. And we are what's called a popular library, which means I like to think it means everybody loves us, which it sort of does, but it also means that we focus our collection on popular materials. And so our collection and resource services team, sometimes affectionately referred to as tech services, you might hear those interchangeably today, does a tremendous job of looking at the materials that we have in our collection, how quickly they're moving off our shelves or our virtual shelves, as the case may be, and making sure to get the items that people are interested in. So when things slow down, they move off our shelves. And when we get huge holds, we start ordering extra copies of things. So for those of you who are devoted Libby users, the app, you've seen your name maybe jump on that hold list, and that's because we just bought a whole bunch of extra copies of a book. So when you look at our physical materials, more than half of them are children's materials, and physical materials make up almost 75% of the materials that we are checking out through in our system. And now for the long-term building plans. So that's sort of the future of Whitmore discussion. The library has several branches that are aging and need to be replaced. So we have a long-range plan that looks out 30 years to identify capital maintenance and when buildings will need to be rebuilt or significantly remodeled. And Whitmore's turn is coming up for a remodel, a rebuild. But a key piece of the consideration for Whitmore is our collection and resource services, tech services. And as I mentioned, that is the sort of, I don't know, brain of the organization. This is where all of our materials are ordered, where they're handled. Our deliveries come there and then get distributed to the branches. When you have movement of materials between branches, a lot of those shared materials are stored in our tech services. So if tech services goes down, our library functions are severely interrupted. So our long-term plan, as we look at this, is to move the technical services function first. And then we'll be looking at a rebuild of Whitmore. But when Robin and I met with the mayor a few weeks ago, we were able to talk about how excited we are to make sure that when we do have that opportunity to rebuild Whitmore, we've got our technical services securely situated somewhere else, that we are honoring the hopes and dreams of Cottonwood Heights. We love the synergy that can come with our county and local municipality partnerships. And we're thrilled about thinking about revitalizing our library now in this space.
Yeah. Can I take a second?
Please.
I just wanted to say I was thrilled to see one of the things that I talked about was what we're doing at Hillside and our town center plan, master plan, and how this could really, tie in and be a secondary piece to how we want, this area to look and feel. And so they were more amenable than, they were perfectly willing to want to talk and let us work together on design and all of the things that are going to be important for us. And so I was absolutely thrilled with your guys' willingness to want to work with us. So.
Yeah, it sounds like from some of your initial plans that they dovetail really nicely with some of the thinking around what we're doing with our new builds anyway. So there's a natural alignment in our sort of vision for a new library. And of course, anytime we're looking at a major rebuild or a relocation of a library, we're working closely with the community to make sure we understand what the community's needs are and how we can do our best to meet those needs. So that's sort of the high level. And then we wanted to take some time to talk about Whitmore specifically, because that's right here in your community. And then so we've got the experts over here for that.
All righty, so the Whitmore branch. We were named Whitmore after Rich Whitmore, who donated the land. And 50 years ago, this November, we opened. And just as a little side note, we are having a 50th celebration. And we would like, the mayor and council to be involved with that. We're still working on all the details of that plan.
Great. Yeah, the sooner you have a date, the better. That'd be great.
Friday, November 17th.
Friday, November 17th.
Send an email too.
Yes, follow up on that. And when
No,
we-
I hate to say it, but in November, the 17th is on a Sunday.
It is
okay, I'm sorry. It would have been the 15th then.
Friday.
I apologize.
Thank you.
Thank you. So just as a fun fact, I suppose, the library administration offices were in the basement of Whitmore for many years until the new Meridian and West Jordan Library were built. Now that's where tech services is located.
Good.
So these are some of our stats. Just this first quarter of this year, we had over 47,000 people come to the library. Our circulation was almost 177,000. And our room bookings were 187. Our community, we have 2 study room, quiet study or small meeting rooms, and then we have our large auditorium space that holds about 92. And we've had 187 bookings so far this year.
Those are really convenient.
Yeah.
It's really convenient.
They're very busy and they go quickly.
That's a great community service. I'd have it.
We've got 155 programs and the attendance has been over 7,400 people coming to those. A lot of them are the pre-K programs. We have about 18 story times a month. And those numbers, I have that. Yeah, I do. About 3,200 pre-K just in the first quarter.
Wow.
So far. It's a busy time. Wednesday mornings might not be the time. If you're wanting quiet study. It's super busy, but we do have a lot of other programs for both adults, for adults, tweens, teens, and school age also. But we're a very busy place, and we're gearing up for the summer reading program that'll be starting June 1st. And last year we had nearly 2,600 participants at Whitmore, and there were 2,400 plus people attended the almost 70 programs that were just over the course of the summer. So there's something going on for all ages, all the time, all summer. With our usual use of our spaces, we also have the public PCs and over 1,100 sessions per month of that use, and with wireless it's over 1,700. A lot of that would be like in our quiet study, things like that, and we have other little nooks for people to.
Do you guys try to use any of the technology available to track where people are coming from?
Oh,
Do you know what I'm saying?
I think I do, like where someone is using.
Somebody that's coming to Whitmore, where are they coming from? Where, whether it's, address on a license when they check out, or cell phone data that tells us, where they originate from. And I'd be fascinated how far away people come from.
That's a great question. We're pretty careful about what the tracking we do for library patrons. Key library value is sort of the privacy of patrons, so that you can check out materials and have the confidence that that is a confidential experience.
Right.
So we have some information from for our card holders, generally speaking. But Jen or Matt, do we keep any data on tracking where folks are coming from outside their?
Yeah, we can have some in anonymized data that allows us to see if people are using past branches or whatever. And we find that Cottonwood Heights, a lot of people from Cottonwood Heights use Cottonwood Heights Library, or Whitmore Library, but they also use the surrounding branches, and then vice versa.
Okay.
There's a lot of cross pollination as people live in one place and work in another, and back and forth.
So yes.
Great. Yes, thank you.
Okay, We also have, I guess. So, sorry, I'm a little bit behind on my clicking. So just a variety of programs, for adults. We found that they really like the DIY, crafts. And we do those in person as well as take home. They seem to love that. We have a long-standing nonfiction book club that, we have pretty good attendance with that. It meets once a month. It's a lot of fun on Wednesday nights. We'd love to have some of you join us. As I mentioned, preschool story times, but we also have a chess club. And we do read to a dog. We have a couple different dogs that come in. That's very popular. It's
Read to a dog.
read to a dog. It's really good for early readers. If they
Oh,
are,
that's cute.
yeah, well, it helps them with skill building because they're having a non-judgmental audience.
Their parents
Do you
not
mi-
there.
do you mind if I ask, what are the ages of the children that read to the dogs?
Usually it's probably 6 to 9.
That is brilliant. That's so brilliant. I love that. Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun and they enjoy it. So, and then we also have a kids book club called Great Reads. The tweens and teens, there's chess club, and they seem to be loving the take home origami. Just these lovely little delicate. You know, I can't do it myself, but I'm glad they love it. We also have an art gallery. I guess in the past, we have, before your building here, we used to have some of Cottonwood Heights art shows. We have some, we work closely with the elementary that's nearby. We have worked with them, and we also have other artists in our space. Another unique program that we have for adults and families is the Babcock Performing Readers, and it's Readers Theater. And we've had a long-standing partnership with them to have them come do that. It's a wonderful, they work with us. And of course, the first two on the left here, those are Eclipse, thank you. Eclipse programs. And then we had a handbell choir this last Christmas.
A what?
Handbell choir.
Oh, well,
Something new and different for us. And then we have library of things, and Mika's gonna talk about that.
Yeah, so we have a number of items you can check out, not just books or movies. We've got telescopes, we've got Launchpad tablets, which are tablets that are preloaded with apps for kids to learn things. They're not just fun, although they are fun too. We have like GoPros, so you can check out a GoPro and go film stuff. We also do 3D printing. You can send a file to us that you want 3D printed and we'll 3D print it for you. Actually, all of our branches have that now, not just Whitmore. It is a really great service. It's really fun.
wow. Amazing.
Oh, any questions or anything?
I have a book that I haven't returned since 1991. I don't know what the late fee is for that, but should probably get it back.
There are caps on those, so.
There are caps, okay. That was my question. Nothing else for me.
You are the first. You are the first. Don't stay out. So if you're worried about it, come on into a branch.
Come on
We'll
back.
help you work it out. We want you to come in and not be afraid to talk to us about your
Okay, good.
lost books or late fees.
That's a lot off my chest. I've been waiting years for that, so thank you.
I really appreciate you coming in. It's, we use the library quite often.
Good.
And it's really convenient for me because I just walk across the way and, my neighbors do the same and it's really energizing to see them carrying books back and forth to the library. And knowing that the services there are there, the booking for the rooms, like I said, is something I've used for years and years. Just has made a difference in the stuff that I do outside of, my normal things. And the staff is just so helpful every single time I come in. I can't tell you how many times I've lost my library card. So they're patient with me.
Oh, good.
you know, in today's world, I've heard lots, you know, with so many books on your phone and being digitized that, you know, I want you to know you're our community, you're a part of Conwood Heights that's how we look at you, you know, with the ability to have events and be a part of who we are as a community, I think starts with, you know, the great library system that the county has and specifically Whitmore. So, you know, you wouldn't get more commitment from, I think, a council than you could in this city for everything that you all do. So thank you for coming. We appreciate it and are unbelievably excited about the ability to rebuild it even. Have we decided if the library will be closed during the rebuild, or will it stay open and build around, or have you looked at that?
It's early to say. It's early to say.
Okay,
I wonder if it'll be closed for a rebuild, especially if we're talking about sort of where we're situating it on
Right.
the property I think it would be hard to keep it open and rebuild based on these like extremely preliminary conversations.
right.
But we have, and Jen and Matt, correct me, or anybody, team library, jump in. We have for previous rebuilds, like when we've had to close, set up maybe a storefront operation nearby or created some accommodations to try and make sure that the services are still available to residents. And that's something that'd be really important in any of our communities, but certainly Cottonwood Heights loves the library. Whitmore is one of our busiest libraries in the system. And so we are thrilled to be a part of this community and can't wait to be thinking about a rebuild where we can really build on that community space that you're speaking of.
Yeah, awesome.
May I ask a clarifying question? So this is Alan Burrell, remote. So I understand that you're going to be upgrading the technology, which is a support element for the entire Salt Lake County library system. So I'm understanding that to be somewhat internal before you would raise the building to the ground and do some kind of a rebuild. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, so tech services is a name that used to make more sense before tech services meant IT to the world. And so that's our collection and resource services. And so it does include our digital materials, but it also includes all of our physical materials. It's part of the reason we're changing the name to collection and resource services. And yes, to your question, we will be relocating collection and resource services before we make any changes to the Whitmore structure, because we cannot have an interruption in service for our collection and resource services. The whole system would
So that
be halted.
So that service for the entirety of the Salt Lake County Library System will be relocated out of Cottonwood Heights to a different location?
Yes, that's the plan right now.
And when is that planned for? Like, is that this calendar year or next calendar year or?
Oh, man, we have been working so hard on that, and I would love to give you a firm answer. We had a plan to connect, this is more detail than you need. I wish I had a firm answer for you. We are working on it. We hope very soon. We hope to have more information about that in the coming months.
This will play a big part into how quickly the rebuild happens. So that's what has to happen first before we look at redesign.
Yeah.
Okay, so then it likely in 2025, you'll start to look at design ideas, or are you already looking at redesign? Do you have any sketches at all?
Not at all. 2025 is the early end of when we would start looking at redesign for Whitmore. So that relocation process may require its own construction.
And Councilmember Burrell, that is what we asked to be heavily involved with, that process.
Yes.
The redesign and look and feel and facade, all those things.
Got it. So that's more in 2025 is at the earliest.
Right, and that shouldn't be a surprise to you. We'll be reaching out when we're moving into those design discussions.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, well, hope those seats weren't too hot. That's fine.
Stretch out again.
Thank you guys for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having
We
me.
love the library, so great. Thank you. Okay. Item number 4 on our agenda is the Cottonwood Heights Parks and Recreation Service Area Boundary Area discussion. So we have our executive director for the rec service area, Ben Hill, here. So Ben, why don't you come up? It looks like we have, oh, hi.
You know, Rachel.
Yeah, I do know Rachel. I sound like, what? I had to think twice. I'm like, yeah, okay, Rachel's here with us.
Yeah, so Rachel Anderson is the Cottonwood Heights Park and Recreation Service Area, the legal counsel.
Okay.
She is instrumental in helping me when I get in binds and new bills come out. So we really appreciate what Rachel does for the service area. Well, I appreciate the city council, the mayor, Tim having us here again, second time this year, which is like we're setting a record. But in this situation, last time when I presented, we talked about how the boundaries are not the same between the city of Cottonwood Heights and the Parks and Recreation District. So we kind of went to work on it. We actually had some outside sources asking some questions. We had in the past other areas annex in. So sometimes when those questions get asked, I reached out to Rachel and I said, Rachel, what can we do about this? What can we do about lining up the boundaries? So I'd like to just do a little bit of a history lesson again. Really quickly, is in 1967 was when the service area, the Cottonwood Heights Parks and Recreation Service Area was formed. So 1967, so it looks like maybe 10 years before even the library came on. And for those 40 years, the purpose behind the creation of the service area was to serve the community of Cottonwood Heights in the parks and recreation world, to have a heightened sense of sensitivity to all things parks and recreation. At first, it started out with mostly aquatics, and then it moved into parks, recreation, ice skating, all sorts of things. Well, we evolve. And I think what happens in 2005, when the city incorporates and sets their boundaries, the city and the community looked a lot different. Back in 1967, I'm sure there wasn't as many houses or development as there was in 2005. So we're really looking at this as a cleanup opportunity or an opportunity for the service area to catch up with the community of Cottonwood Heights. The community of Cottonwood Heights has grown and the service area's boundaries have not grown with it. But I think the intent and the original intent of the service area's creation was to serve the entire community of the Cottonwood Heights area. So at first, when we looked at this a number of years ago, I've now been in my position for 9 years. And as we looked at this at the beginning, it was like, oh, for someone to petition into the service area, it's a pretty tough battle. You got it 90% vote in by those coming in. And so that's a pretty tough uphill battle in most cases. And working with Rachel, we've now found a way that allows us to do that Rachel has a lot of experience with other districts outside of Parks and Recreation that she can expound on. But it allows us to do that with the two public entities, the City Council and the Board of Trustees of the service area. Maybe I'll turn some time over to you, Rachel, and let you kind of explain how that kind of works. I know we can share more of those details. It's really just to get the idea out here, not making any decisions. I still have to work with my board. I really haven't had a work session with them as well. I need to have that. And then we would work as staff to see where we want to go from here.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you're all aware, with special districts, which is what the Cottonwood Heights Parks and Recreation Service Area is, as a special district, it's just a different layer of local government from yourself. So, you've got county governments, city governments, and then you've got districts. So we're a completely independent political subdivision of the state of Utah, just like you are. And we just kind of are layered on top of each other. As Ben mentioned, if the boundaries of a district are looking to be changed, and the boundaries of a district don't need to match a municipality or a county, they can weave in and out and go over and beyond municipal boundaries, and they do all the time. So when a change needs to be made, certainly there's the option for landowners themselves to petition, and like he was saying, that's not quite the method that we're looking for here that makes sense. But there are other methods which just involve the two government entities working together to do a boundary adjustment, and that's what we'd be looking at. And that process is a lot more simple. So the two entities would agree to the areas that they wanted to adjust the boundaries for, and you would do a joint intent resolution saying, we intend to adjust the boundaries so that because in essence, the areas that are not within our boundaries right now are your responsibility for Parks and Rec. So we'd be saying we want to adjust the boundaries so that the responsibility for parks and recreation is with our district. And then there would be a notice requirement and a public hearing, and then the parties can, or the two entities would agree at the end of that process if, you know, significant number, if we don't get a significant number of protests, the two entities can then agree and adopt resolutions to approve it. And the boundary map is sent to the Lieutenant Governor's office, it gets approved, and then it gets filed with the county reporter. And it's a pretty simple process that I've done multiple times with different districts. So we think it makes sense, as Ben was saying, that it matches the intent of the original district, which is to be the Parks and Recreation provider for the community of Cottonwood Heights. And that the evolution of time just hasn't caught up with it. We think it would have the positive benefit of treating all Cottonwood Heights residents the same within our district boundaries. The district does provide some additional benefits to the members of the district as being resident members, and it would, we think, make sense for all of Cottonwood Heights to be treated the same. I don't know if there's anything else you want me to add, Ben.
Yeah, I think it's just that I did provide 2 copies of the map. They're both the exact same, just so you can kind of see them. And so the purple shaded area, of course, is the Parks and Recreation District. And the core of that was 1967. And then you can see that there's even areas in Holiday, Sandy, unincorporated County, and Murray that annexed in, went through that process and came in.
Pardon me, this is Alan Burrell. Could you please put that those displays up within the Zoom call so I may see them as well?
I don't know if you're gonna be able to get detail, Ellen. We could probably send it to you through email.
Yeah.
Could we do that?
For sure.
Oh, I see. This is not a digital. I didn't realize.
No,
I thought,
handout.
No, it's a.
Okay.
The poster.
okay, thank you for that clarification.
What's kind of-
last presentation too.
What's kind of fun and interesting is, so this area down here in District 1, you've got these almost a little island, which I found out from Ben that there were some neighborhoods that petitioned to be annexed in because they wanted to be part of the district, which is kind of fun. It's been an interesting kind of exercise for me. When I was first appointed to this about a year ago, I went down and met with a lot of the folks down by Crestwood Park, which obviously Crestwood Park's owned by the county. And there were a lot of people that, you know, wanted to see some improvements with their parks and recreation, but I had to tell them, hey, these things here, this is actually not Cottonwood Heights, this is the county. And I've worked with Ben and others in the past to try to say, hey, could we provide some resources for them down here? But as the rec center has mentioned, that's not in their service area. I said, well, how do we change that service area? Well, I guess it made me ask the question first off of why is not everyone in the city in this service area? And obviously there's historics for that reason. So knowing that we're having this discussion, you know, every community, every part of Cottonwood Heights, every district has different interests. I've communicated to my colleagues here that a big item that's of interest to the people that live down by Crestwood is the community park and pool down there. And so I wanted to get some feedback from residents on what their opinion is on if this did happen. Because as you can see in District 1, there is a massive amount of that neighborhood that would be impacted. And so I sent a mailer out, and just for the record, I did have a couple people reach out and say, hey, who's paying for this mailer and who's paying for the survey? Someone even asked if it's being paid for by some developer that wants to maybe eventually, you know, remodel this pool. And I'll just say it was paid for personally out of my pocket. There were not city resources used, but I did want to see what the residents of District 1 thought. And this is not a conclusion by any means, but just with my colleagues, I've had 76 responses, and that mail piece actually only got to their home yesterday. So it's been about 24 hours. So there'll be a lot more, and I'm happy to update everybody. But out of the 76 responses that I've got, 73% said that they're interested in trying to improve kind of their parks and recreation down here. And out of that 73, 90.2% said yes, knowing the increased tax liability, they would want to be in the rec center district, which I thought was interesting. And again, that's a snapshot of 24 hours. That will obviously change as time goes on, and I'll update my colleagues here, but I'm happy that we're having this discussion because, you know, there are times I know that I've had residents that have gone to the rec center and said, hey, I'm a resident. Why am I not getting this discount? Well, you're not in the rec center district. I know it's super confusing, but you kind of have to explain it to them.
You know, one of the best explanations for why is we didn't exist.
Right. That's
As a city
100%.
when that was created, so they just created an area, a community that I thought was great at the time, but now we're a city and and there are portions that are excluded from being in the district. So anyway.
Yeah, and I try to explain to them that, hey, they're in a way, I know that the city obviously spends money on parks and recreation, and we do contract with you all to manage some of our parks. But in a big fashion, you tend to also be the parks and recreation arm, and I know most cities have a parks department. And Anzac Park in District 1 is owned and operated by you all, which is great. And I guess the larger question is should everyone be contributing to that effort, or should some of Cottonwood Heights be contributing and not others? You know, and how do you make it palatable to make sure that they have good assets in their community that make sense? So
What's the mill rate? What's the mill rate?
The current mill rate, which is set in June, so it will change coming up June 15th-ish, is 0.00030732. And so the way you factor that out is you take the county's tax market value of your home. So you look at your tax
I
paper.
know. Yeah, I got it. I just needed to know the mill rate. So, yeah, because Councilmember Holt and I had a discussion, and
yeah,
my area will be paying a lot for this service. So I'm gonna have to sell it a little bit. I mean, I moved in from another area of Cotton Heights into my home and went to the rec center to just change my address, and they said I'm not in, and I was like, what? What? So let me ask another question. What's the notice requirement? Will every single resident who's gonna be affected by this new tax rate get a letter? Is it just we post, you know, what do we do?
We have the option, there's a newspaper, option, but there's always the option of sending individual, notices to all residents. So that's something we could explore and see if that would be, palatable or, you know, more effective in your mind to send to individual, and we could compare the costs on those two. Between doing newspaper ads and sending out individual mailers. I mean, I don't even know how many residents or properties we're talking about here, but.
And how
That
we
was
would
gonna be
divide
one of
those
my
out.
questions. Do we have any idea of what the number of residents? Not yet.
Yeah, we're
The
very
numbers the city would-
preliminary right now. I mean, like
Yeah.
Ben said, we haven't even really fully hashed this out with the district's board yet. But those are things that we can examine and decide which is the best way to go.
We definitely have capabilities to send out mailers because
Yeah.
our GIS staff can
Right.
develop and identify addresses, which we've done.
I think it's only fair. I mean,
Yeah,
I did a quick calculation, and for my area, it would probably be an $800 to $1,000 per year property tax hit. And I think that's significant and warrants an individual notice.
yeah, I agree with that completely. And I do think at the end of the day, this is gonna impact residents, and some like it, some won't, and it's our job to make sure that we listen to those voices and see what they want, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the tricky part is, you know, how do you, and I'm thinking of this myself, how do I take in consideration these people? But then if I was to poll everyone, and if I pulled all of these people and said, hey, should these other people in the neighborhood be part of it? What does that look like holistically?
Sure.
And it's probably different than if it's just there. And so that's trying to balance that and give that input. Is tricky.
Yeah, well, so, I mean, there's some areas, up on the north side where like a neighbor's paying and the neighbor across the street's not, but yet they're both going to the
Yeah.
park. So just to give an example of the mill rate, how it would affect $1 million home. I think that's an easy roundup number. I think the service area's medium house market rate is different than the cities because of course we have different boundaries, but I think this is above even the medium market value of the city if we go $1 million. So $1 million, they get a tax exemption of a property that they own for 45%. So you times that by 0.55, which is 55% of their value. And then you times it by the mill rate, which is 0.000732. So $1 million home would be taxable at $550,000. And that would be $402.60 a year. And you divide that by 12 months, it would be paying $33.55 per month to help out the entire city and be collectively evenly on the same page. And it would really help us as a city and service area partnership to go, we're talking the same language, because right now, when the Crestwood discussion gets brought up, my board has to recruit themselves and say, it's not our responsibility. We can't discuss that because our responsibility is to the residents of our area. And so this allows us to start talking about all possibilities
Working
within
with
the
the
whole.
county on that, see if there's something that you guys can do to help revitalize that area.
There's the other financial factor would be those who would then join the rec center would be paying less than they would if they weren't in the district.
Yeah, and I think there's all sorts of details we could iron out where coming up with the right number of what a non-resident pays versus what's a resident. Those are all just things that we can talk about and go, yeah, a non-resident should pay this amount and a resident should get this discount.
And one other thing that I wanted to mention, and again, this is part of my calculus is, so where I live, I am in the rec center district, and my neighbors, I know that the rec center has had to increase taxes throughout the years, not the year, throughout the years. And I know that there are things that are costs are going up, and we're experiencing that on our side. And kind of what you end up seeing, it seems to be, is that you're just having to continue to go off the backs or pocketbooks of the same people without having kind of everyone in the city contributing to these assets that people are enjoying. So in other words, my point is, the people that are on my street are going to continue to have a higher propensity of taxes going up more frequently than if all the city was in.
Sharing it with a wider area.
This would
Makes
definitely
Stronger for the.
makes it
district.
stronger, less tax increases over the years as you have more tax base.
And that, I guess, only currently matters to the people that are in it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, you're gonna have to rebuild. I mean, you've got a lot of maintenance to do. And so one of the other concerns I have is that means that, a geo bond is now going to be my responsibility. But right now, it's not, because I'm not in the district. So it's not just the annual, it's what you're gonna have to do in the coming years to keep everything in good order.
Yeah, and like we mentioned our last time I was here, we have a 10-year maintenance math plan. So we'll do that again next year where we're not anticipating rebuilding in 10 years, and every 10 years we'll look at that. But I think when the time does come to rebuild, the cost of inflation and everything, it will need to be a partnership between the district, the city, and the county. Because we have built a rec center. We have built the best rec center in the entire valley off the backs of just this many residents. And it's a bigger rec center than we probably should have, but what a great amenity it is. So in order for us to rebuild, we probably couldn't build what we have now. It just isn't valuable. So, but maybe we put a library service to it. Maybe when we rebuild, it's got a senior center attached to it. There's all sorts of possibilities, but if we're talking the same language, we can have those discussions.
Fair enough.
And one interesting note is it goes both ways. So the Hibachi, the city's looking to annex that into the city, and it's already a part of the service area. So it's interesting that it goes the opposite way too.
Well, even outside of that, there's areas.
Yeah.
Outside of Cottonwood Heights in Murray and other areas.
Yep, and unincorporated, there's some areas of unincorporated, which we know is either gonna go to Sandy or they're gonna have to kind of petition to come into Cottonwood Heights.
You're talking about kicking those areas out as well? No.
No, they are in and we want them in.
Okay.
But
Talking about the unincorporated islands and the legislation that was just passed that's requiring all the unincorporated islands
Oh,
to annex into the nearby cities.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if we annex the area south of.
Yeah, you might get some more.
and
new
those
ones,
residents
yeah.
might want to know, oh, I'm already in the service area, so, oh man, I might want to stay with Cottonwood Heights, because if I go to Sandy, now I'm paying the service area of Cottonwood Heights Parks and Rec and all city
Cities
taxes.
taxes.
As opposed to
Parks Department.
Yeah.
And Sandy's Parks Department. Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
that's an important discussion item for the annexation.
The other thing that I think would be interesting in this process is just to inform residents what the rec center actually does, owns and operates, because there are people that probably go to Anzac Park and think that it is Cottonwood Heights City, which again, normally it would be, but this is a very strange, unique scenario. but just informing them that, hey, these things that you're using are actually being taken care of by the rec center.
Yep. So very quickly, could you maybe describe next steps?
So I think the next step is, I need to have a work session, invite Rachel to my board and talk about how this works. And then Tim and I can share how the details goes. But the next step would be maybe have another work session, but it would be the first step is the intent to look into it, basically.
Because this would end up being a council decision.
Yes.
It would be both
Both
entities would
both
be
entities would
deciding.
have to pass a
Yeah,
resolution.
and you could do the intent resolution and then have a public hearing and all that and ultimately not decide to go for it. We could go down that path.
One thing I would add as well is if the council decided this is something that they're interested in, I would be interested in adding some other things. So that these residents can have some additional input with the rec center and their board, like if it's a Crestwood Community Council or other things that you could add on to kind of have them be more involved with this kind of us aligning our boundaries and really it is a city function without being a city function at that point. So,
And I think the intent when the city first came on, the city's never had a Parks and Rec department because it's always relied on the service area. And so it's just the fact that some people are getting those services without.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so.
I didn't realize that until we had our discussion, so it's a really good.
I didn't realize that. I was on the council
Yeah.
too, and I was like,
Our
whoa,
community about,
yeah.
so thank you for bringing that.
Yeah, and I
Okay.
appreciate it. And
Thanks,
again,
guys.
the Board of
Thank you
Trustees
for
governs it, so I'll need to work closely
Yeah.
with them.
Yep.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yep, keep
Thank
moving. Thank you. Okay, item 5, we have 2 staff reports on our agenda. The first one is a tentative budget discussion. Some of the items that are currently under discussion. Yes, you want, and I'm happy to have you right now, Tim, start that process.
Yeah, so we adopted the tentative budget at the last meeting. Obviously, we have until June 18th before you have to make a final vote. We're gonna know more information by the 18th, especially on the levy rate. We usually get that a couple of days before. We've included the budget in the documents, the tentative budget. There are really no changes. Scott, correct me if I'm wrong on that. From the tentative budget that we adopted. And so this just gives us the opportunity, this meeting and the next meeting, and then on the 18th, to have additional conversations. If there's modifications that you want to look at, we'll have those conversations at that time. One of the things that we need to have a better understanding of is at the June 4th meeting, we're gonna have 2 public hearings. One is gonna be on the budget for people to make comment. But in addition to that, with the new legislation that's come about, executive staff members, we have to have a separate public hearing on any increases to pay for executive staff. And so those 2 public hearings will be at that meeting.
What does that include?
It includes
COLA, merit?
any increase in compensation is what it is. So it does include, if there's a COLA, it includes if there's a merit. And we need to calculate that to have that prepared for that public hearing. Doesn't mean you can't modify it up until the 18th, but it's something that we
And
need
who-
to,
And that's just for executive staff.
executive staff. They excluded the city
Department
council.
directors.
Yeah, department directors and I believe appointed staff members as well, which we have city engineer, which is Matt, and then public, and then treasurer as well as part of that. So anyway, right now, what is currently in the budget, which is same as in the tentative budget that we talked about 2 weeks ago, there's a proposal for a 3% COLA and then the merit increases as well. So that's right now what is in the tentative budget that was adopted. And so any additional input on those things would be helpful in preparation for the next meeting. Go ahead, Scott, if that's okay.
Yeah.
And there's just a couple other items. One is that Mike let me know, I can't remember what day last week. There's a grant for $72,185 from Sully County Health Department for a community health coalition. We'd like to add that in. There would be revenue and expense for that.
What was the amount, did you say?
72,185.
Wow.
And so we would like to add that in, it would just be offsetting expense and revenue, so it would increase the revenue, increase the expense, that same amount. And then, and Tim, I only took partial notes on this one, but there was a possible change to an EDCU item.
Yeah, that was one that we were, in fact, the mayor and I were talking about this week about looking at that. There's been some changes with the Economic Development Corp of Utah. We currently contribute 5,000. We just renewed that, but for this upcoming budget year, a determination would need to be made. If you wanted to provide the contribution, you can. If you want to pull it out, we wouldn't.
So they lost their state contract. So the state was contributing, they were probably their biggest contributor. And so there's speculation that there's not enough really known of what's gonna happen to that organization. So it's something we need to consider whether we would want to. So how long do we have? It would just have to be in this budget.
Yeah, so we are renewed until basically next March.
From our previous.
Yeah, from the previous budget. If you did not want to include it, we could exclude it out of this budget.
So this would actually be, so after March of 25, if we didn't include it in the budget, that's when, and we could always do a budget amendment. So actually, I'd probably be in favor of removing that right now.
So I think what ends up, what's going on out there is, right, the GOEO board, Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity, decides who kind of their corporate recruitment arm is going to be, and it's been EDC Utah for, I mean, decades.
30 years.
And the current GOEO board decided, hey, we don't feel like we want to continue that investment. And I don't know if that means they're going to pick someone else. I don't know if that means
They're gonna
that
do
they're
it
going to
internally.
renew or do it internally. That was the other thing. And so a lot of municipalities around the valley are trying to decide, okay, this is a change. Now that they don't have that state contract, do we give more to GOEO? Do we, where does it go? Where does it funnel? And I think that's what everyone's trying to figure out, right?
And by the way, so the 5,000 you can add to this, the 5,000 that we contribute, we get their information on requests for information for office or different groups. So we are on the list that they send out, they blast out emails if we want to submit potential sites for companies that they're recruiting. So that's one of the things. And then there are some marketing components, even with the ICSC, the retail and convention that we were just at. There's components of that 5,000 goes towards. So those are just some of the things, as well as some training opportunities and some data opportunities, correct?
There's those community profile type stuff, and then they have a couple different grants every year. It's usually $1,000 or $2,000 that provides us an opportunity to apply for those. And we've taken advantage of those. I think they helped offset the cost of the city video one year, and we've used them to create specific marketing materials. So, yeah, those would be the benefits.
So, yeah, so if because there's uncertainty of whether they're going to exist, we're paid through March. If we don't include it in the budget, we can always do a budget amendment to include it later. So that would be my recommendation, is to take it out and then make a decision as we see maybe the state that they're in the beginning of the
There's
year.
probably going to be some other place that's propped up to invest in gas, right?
I mean, GOEO might be doing a lot of the things that they're currently doing. You never know. So that's why I think maybe we pull it out and then decide to do a budget amendment if we change our, when we reevaluate.
The thing that I'm really curious about is there are private funding sources that go to EDC Utah as well. And what's going to happen?
Well, I know
With that.
yeah, they're kind of in a tough spot because they're losing some of those because they put them in there because of the state contract. And it's kind of this chicken and the egg situation where, and I think, look, I'd be fine in March if we end up wanting to have that almost earmarked for some future use and kind of see where things land. But until then, take it off.
Yeah. That work?
Yep,
I can do that.
3.
Yeah, I agree. That was a long time for us to. So let's see. I mean, So I think that it'll be interesting to see what happens.
I don't think there's a board out there that Sean's not on.
No, no, no.
Seriously.
Like, really?
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Even my own family's board of trustees.
No, yeah.
It's gone.
That's my kid's godfather. He doesn't know it yet, but.
And then, we're waiting to get final confirmation on the UFA final number. I keep hearing it could change, but I don't know what it's gonna ultimately do, so that could change, but that's coming.
What do you have currently? in
I
there?
have I think it's 5.4%, at like 240, if I remember right. Yeah, 244, 5.44% is what's included. If that were to change, I'll let you know as soon as I know that. And then we had asked also for input on the stormwater fee that we're currently charging, if we want to change and go to the new, or well, really the proposed originally when it was adopted, get to that, or what we want to do, and that.
We had a consensus, we were gonna go forward with that.
Yeah, I think we're ready to do that. Yep.
Okay.
I think those are the only things that, and once again, we'll have conversations in the next 2 meetings after this, but we just wanted additional input.
We haven't, I know we've had multiple people traveling and including myself out of town, so we haven't had much conversation with COLA, but so I think we're good to continue with the 3% that there is there for now. And we can adjust if we need to by the next meeting.
May I ask for a point of clarification? Would
Yes.
that then be seeking a total of 4% between COLA and merit?
No,
5.5.
It's higher depending upon where you're at in the structure of the merit. Our average is around 2.6 for the whole city.
Yeah.
But those that are not topped out, it's a little over 3 under the merit average.
Yeah.
And then the COLA would be with that as well on top of that.
Well, and then there are a significant number of individuals that are not eligible for a merit due to the fact that they're already at the top of the range, and so their only increase would be the COLA. And so.
We give them 1%, don't we?
I thought it was a 1%
You're
bonus.
right, there's a 1% longevity that comes by way of more like a bonus, if you will. It doesn't affect your net and,
Your growth.
bi-weekly income or your gross. It doesn't go into your base for the next year and so on and so forth. You're right, so that is also included in there.
Great.
All right, thank you.
Good question. Okay, any other questions from the council? No? Okay, let's move on. Our last item, our last staff report rather, is item B, city manager position discussion. So if somebody is not aware, our great city manager is put in a notice to that June 21st.
June 21st.
June 21st, he will be taking a full-time teaching position at the University of Utah. Ed?
So the red, baby.
It's a closet. Anyway, so
I wanna see you wear that BYU hat up there.
He wants to keep this new job, so.
So we thought that we put this item on and discuss as a council some of the priorities, qualifications that we think are important as we go into this new searching hire. Councilmember Burrell has been in Newport Beach and then been in some meetings that she thinks have been really beneficial for some of the things that she'd like to add, but I'd like the entire council to contribute into some of the things that are important to you as we go into this discussion. So as the things that we're looking for in a new city manager. So I'll open it up to Tim, anything you want to add?
Yeah, and the other thing we really need to define is the process and particularly when you want to meet, when you can meet for interviews and things such as that. We just need to start getting those elements in the works as well. So conversation about that on timing, on what would work for your schedules. those are some things we need to discuss too as part of this conversation.
That's an important matter that I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on in this discussion because we can always do that outside of it with timeframes. But what I want here is I want to know what we want to highlight and make it priorities for this.
It's hard to put down. I mean, we got 23.
Sorry, I was gonna say, we can always look at the qualifications that we put on the application or on the
Yeah.
posting.
Yeah, that gives us a good starting point. I think one of the most critical things is that we set up a rubric so we can have an equitable process through this. Meaning we have a set of questions that each and every candidate is asked. We can share those questions however we want to share it amongst ourselves. But making sure that those questions are designed so that they pull out the information that follows with that application to say, okay, this is how we're going to pull out to find out if you really are qualified for this position.
Yeah.
And we saw some of that. So, I mean, I have a short list of applicants as I went through that, but I think that that's one of the things that we have to do now, I think individually to help us with our timing is to go through these applications, create a short list, come together, have that discussion about the individuals on that short list, make sure that we have that rubric in place with those questions and making sure those questions are equitable and they're not going to be getting us in trouble with Shane or anybody else.
And I agree completely with you. I think that's the next step. As we go into well, I'm not gonna say what we're gonna do there, but anyway, what I want to talk about in this discussion is, do we have things that we want to talk publicly about what we want to highlight as?
I'll mention one thing, and I don't really have the answer of what I want them to say. It's more just getting that sense of the type of person they are. And I'm just most curious, and I'm sure that everyone that works at the city is most curious on what type of leadership style and how are they going to approach, working with these departments of public works, and then how are you going to approach public safety? They're so different, and just the overall approach of their style of leadership. I think that if we ended up giving a day to every applicant and said, okay, lead the city, their leadership approach, they'd probably be 20 different, approaches.
Yeah.
For me, that is key, because there's a lot of things that are going to happen throughout someone's tenure that you're just not going to be able to capture in an interview, but just getting a sense of their character and how they want to approach things and how do they deal with these tough issues that we're facing. And maybe we actually even talk about some of these issues we're facing and ask how they would approach it.
Yeah.
Right. So for me, that's kind of the crux of it.
Councilmember Newell's create a rubric that we put down, and I think that'll provide an equitable process to make sure that we're consistent in how we're asking questions to each candidate.
There's two parts of that, and that's the question you asked in the second, when you talked about a rubric. One idea I've started to make a list of all these things, and it was Councilmember Burrell and I had a brief discussion today that every single one of those check mark items that we want, you can rate those candidates from like a 1 to 5, say. And so when you're interviewing, you give them a score, and that way you can equitably go back across all the interviews and say, this is how that candidate scored against all the others. So I like that opportunity, and the questions should be designed to be able to fill in that rubric. Qualification.
And just to add to that, so Paula has been working on, we've obviously done this in the past, and we do have at least some starting points on questions with scoring elements to that might be helpful. That kind of creates that rubric.
Right.
We can send that out to you.
Yeah, we have what we use when we hire, and send that out, so you have a template, and then you can add it with your own, what you like, questions. As long as you all come into agreement with what it is, and then I'll make the final document and have it ready.
I appreciate that.
And then if you would have either an HR, Dan or Shane, one of us with you, so that you give a little how to on interviewing, so we all stay in the same page.
Two of the things that I wanted to highlight were relevant experience and education. That I think we would put into a scoring model.
I just had a question.
Yeah.
So look, I'm not a pro judge or interviewer. The last thing that I judged or interviewed was the Peach Queen competition last year for Brigham City's queen of the Peach Queen days. So I've only done that. But there was a point system.
Seems like that was controversial.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So there was a point system. My question is, does the point system produce whoever gets the highest points, that's who it is? Or does
No,
it
it's
advise
not.
you? I just want to make sure.
No.
Okay.
It's just a guide to give you some parameters,
Yeah.
and you can go back and, as a committee, ask questions about why or how come we put somebody in a certain position or
Okay.
point, or point scale.
That was,
So it's
I just was like, oh, wow, okay.
Yeah.
because there's gonna be trade-offs.
Yeah.
They're completely, and so I don't know, so what do we do? Submit our list, take the template?
Yes,
Make
so if you submit your list to me, I'll add all the points. At the end of it, you can have. How many second interviews did you have?
What's that?
How many second interviews did you have?
There are multiple.
Multiple second interviews,
Yeah.
until you are comfortable with one candidate, and then, and I mean, the points give you a guidance, but it's your consensus that will define who the last.
Councilmember Burrell, anything you'd like to add?
Yes, thanks so much. And I apologize that I can't be there in person, but I am getting a tremendous amount of great ideas, best practices as I go through these 3-hour programs. Tomorrow night will be my third one here in Newport Beach, California, where a city that was incorporated back in 1905 and undoubtedly has, pretty deep coffers, based on the value of the real estate here. But they really have worked in innovative ways to ensure the viability of their city going out into the future. And I found it fascinating that at about the same time that we were in a mode to find a new city manager at the time that Tim Tingey was hired, Newport Beach, after 20 years of having the same city manager, found themselves also looking for a city manager. And while arguably a city like Newport Beach, California could have chosen any candidate, likely perhaps from around the country or the world, they honed in on a woman who was in mid-career with the city of Irvine. She had a very strong finance background. One of the things that we need to think about as our city ages, and Newport definitely has in front of mind, is how do you fund pension funds? And so they were extremely interested to make sure that their next city manager had a strong finance background, and also had demonstrated the ability to manage a sophisticated large staff and budget. So they brought her out and she spoke for about 45 minutes. It was fascinating to me that they chose this, again, woman mid-career from the city of Irvine to be their city manager. One of the things she really emphasized was the culture that was so important amongst key staff. And like other cities that are a little more mature than Cotton Heights in terms of their longevity, such as I've also, in making outreach related to our city manager search, Park City also puts a high emphasis on the culture. And in both cases, they came up with their list of 4 to 5, most important tenets, related to things such as integrity, accountability, transparency. Interestingly, for Park City, humor was one of their top 5 important attributes. So what I'm getting to that I would like to see within this rubric, and I really thank Councilman Newell for bringing the importance of this forward, is that we ask for demonstrated skill sets and demonstrated work within the areas that are so important at this point in our city's development, such as which candidates have already worked within revitalization of a Main Street area, who have already worked within creating, budgets that our budget, under 30 million. Some of these candidates, we need to make sure that they've been, had responsibility and oversight of really large, budgets, tens of millions of dollar budgets, who understand, deeply, finance. And we also have goals for our city development, such as an arts, perhaps an arts and district and things. So I'm really interested in making sure that we are asking questions that really ask the candidate to describe their demonstrated, not their intentions and their noble ideas, but instead, what have they actually demonstrated? Especially one of the top things for me is process. What systems have they put in place with key staff for, measuring, measurable results, transparency, not only to the council, but to the public. So again, I'm really excited about this process that we're developing, and those are some of my key thoughts.
Great.
Those, one of the things that I've done in the past is we've taken the resumes and taken that rubric and created that rubric so that we can pull information off of that resume to give us a starting point to some of these points here. Is this person, have they ever completed this type of task? What is their education level? What is their skill level? And then from there, we design the questions to be able to ask the individuals and go into greater depth, because you really get a feel for a person when you see them in person and not just on paper. But creating that type of rubric just gives us a great starting point to where it won't take us a lot of time, but it'll take us the time and as individuals to go through each application and score them based on what we're seeing. And I've done that for Supreme Court justices and presidents for our universities, and it works really, really well.
So I think that's hard to do just looking at a resume. I think it has to happen after the first round of interviews. Does that make sense? So that you're actually able to ask questions and understand, because sometimes a resume doesn't explain the type of experience that they've had. But anyway, but anyway, I like your point. Absolutely.
It gives you a chance to formulate your questions.
Yeah.
By going through those resumes, because you can eliminate individuals at that time also.
Yeah.
And actually narrow down to the people that have the skill sets based on the resumes, and I don't know if in their CVs, if they have them, to be able to figure that out pretty quickly.
So Applicant Pro, the program we use, automatically has an AI that looks at what we requested for the advertisement and how it matches the application. And so it already rated some of them. I'm happy to share.
Wonderful, that'd be great.
That'd be good.
To add one more point,
Yes.
I think as we create this list, this rubric, this is how we approach house hunting. I've purchased 13 homes. So you have non-negotiables. These are things we absolutely have to have. And then the secondary list is the things that are nice to have. And that's where the trade-offs come. But I'd like to see that list we absolutely have to have this, because as we mentioned, this is a little bit of a unique government situation where we have CEO, he is the CEO, where typically the mayor would be. And so we've got, I think, a higher bar. So I'd like to see the non-negotiables be marked somehow from the negotiables.
Because that's that part of that too. Where it says you required and.
So it goes through the job description and then it goes through the applicant application, and it just matches the applicant to the job description to say this is a very high match. So this is a high match. This is kind not so much of a match. And so, but I'm happy to put what your non-negotiables and negotiables are and go one by one and do it for you and then submit it to you for review, and you can decide if, what you want to do.
Well, if I may add something, thank you, Paula Melger. I would like to commend the mayor for his format that he has presented to the council for screening the initial 23 applicants. I think that just as it states in the job requirements and description, commensurate work experience needs to be considered. And so I'm looking forward to the council, and I understand that may go ahead and happen later today, with the applications that we have. In my opinion, we have enough information from the applicants, again, initially between their resumes and their cover letters, to screen this down a bit. I don't know, I don't want to say too much, but I don't think this is confidential to say that you know, if the council majority happens to screen out of the interview process someone who one or two of us, that is the minority of us, feel real strongly that there will be a period of time in the next, let's say, so many days, or I don't know what period of time exactly, we could have a chance to talk to our other council colleagues. But I guess I just want to make the point that I don't want to bog this down in too great of formal rubrics that we are not proceeding toward an interview process. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Could I hear?
Yeah, and I think actually the focus will be, what we're talking about is to get to that next stage today. So anyway, thank you, Councilmember Burrell. I really appreciate it. I'm gonna move off of this item number and move into item number 6, which is a review of calendars and upcoming events. First, the art exhibit at City Hall, May 6th through 31st. The Brighton High School alumni, Savannah Coptum and Kylie Priegel. Do anybody know anything about that? What's that? This art exhibit? No, okay, maybe we'll get some more information for it. The community shredding event, June 7th from 9 a.m. to noon. And that's here at the City Hall parking lot. The art exhibit at City Hall from June 3rd to 30th is from Miguel Alejandro Pavon. So I guess all that is just that the Brighton High School alumni are doing the exhibit during May. Yes, perfect, thank you. The Cottonwood Heights Arts Council play, I should have asked you, Arts Council, okay? Sorry, Cottonwood Heights Arts Council play Beauty and the Beast is July 12th, 13th, 15th, 18th, and through the 20th. Performances at 7 and 2 p.m. matinees at Butler Middle School. Hopefully we'll all be able to attend and encourage others to do so. Butlerville Jays Days, July 25th to 27th at Butler Park, and the Bark in the Park is at Mountain View Park. Did we not just do the Bark in the Park? No, we're doing another one. Okay, on August 24th from 9:30 to 11:30. I didn't know we were going to do in a calendar year. Okay, we do have an item to discuss in a closed meeting pertaining to the character and professional competence of an individual. So at this point, I will entertain a motion to end our work session and enter into a closed meeting.
I'll make a motion to end our work session and to move into a closed meeting.
We need to phrase that differently, don't we, Shane? I just saw his hair's been.
For the purpose
of, I got to kind of follow the script here.
discussing that.
For the purpose of discussing litigation, property acquisition, or the character or professional competency or physical or mental health of an individual.
I'll second it without repeating that.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Any opposed?
Councilmember Burrell, are you still there? She's still.
No.
She's muted.
Yeah, she's muted.
We are going, I sent you a text earlier, if you can hear me, we're going to call and link you in on the telephone with this closed meeting, because we're not on Zoom on this.
Oh, okay, I am still here. I had put it on mute, but so I will stand by to receive your phone call.
Okay, great.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay,
Great.
super. Thank you. Thank you so much.